Hey guys, welcome back. Joe here again from ScaleFreak.com, coming to bring you the next step in building the team associated RC10F6, which is this beautiful F1 kit that Team Associated has just released. In this video, we're going to go over building the rear pod. What is a rear pod? Well, if you've been doing anything with pan car, this is all old hat for you. But if you've been doing anything that's not a pan car, this will be something new. What is the pod? Well, in a pan car, your chassis, nice flat piece, the pod actually is independently connected to the back and moves around on its own. This is where the motor and the back axle will be stationed, so this is where the majority of your power and your torque will come from. So in this, you've got, of course, a nice little piece of carbon fiber, which is the base. You've got your bulkheads, which connect on here. This is what's going to carry your motor and your axle, as well as mount your wing, and what will eventually mount the suspension on the front as well. Not complicated to build. This actually thing is very, very, very simple. So first what we're going to do is we're going to mount the bulkheads to the bottom. Now, with the bulkheads, you got to make sure that you select it on the correct side. There will be inserts that fit into this, as well as you'll see that the motor will connect into this as well. So the W part is going to point towards the front of the car. So then the passenger side, which would be this side here, is where your motor is going to mount on, so you know that that is on the right side. There's only 4 screws, well 2 per side, that are going to connect the bulkhead to the bottom of the pod here. And yes, I will use the Loctite on these. Any vibration from the motor and stuff like that will translate directly into these screws. I do not want any screws on my on-road kits to come loose, because if they come loose, they scrape the carpet and they upset race organizers, and they wreck the carpet and they screw up your car. So please, guys, with an on-road kit, please take special care when making sure all your screws, not just the ones on the bottom of your chassis, but all your screws are locked in, Loctited in, whatever you want to call it in, but just make sure that they're in the car. So 1, 2, 3, 4, just like this, and locked down so that everything is nice and secure. And that is 2 of the 4 walls that we're going to build here. Now the next step, of course, is what's going to be your wing stay or your wing mount, but also this is just going to add some good structure to the car itself. So this bad boy here, what you want to pay attention to is which direction this goes on, because you'll notice it's a little bit offset. One side is longer than the other. So what you're going to do is you're going to make it so that the, well, if you look here, one side is actually also longer than the other as well. So you're going to put, just like this, you're going to put the longer side on the driver's side. So make sure you take a look at the instructions on that and make sure you have it the right, correct way to mount. So 1, 2, 3, 4 screws will mount this thing to the back of your bulkhead. So 1, 2, 3, 4. This is also what your wing will mount to. One thing I'm a fan of with this kit is that the mount for the wing, what actually connects the wings to this. So the wing is a nice hardy plastic wing, and the mount are using those aluminum standoffs. So yes, I understand that the wing is going to move a little bit, but you're not going to get extra movement from the wing because the standoffs are made of plastic, and you're not going to worry about screwing a screw in until you just strip everything out, because that's happened before. So got the last screw for this. So this is the 3rd side of the box, because there's going to be another piece that goes on the front and gives this thing its full structure. Now these little standoffs, again, easy enough. If you take a look at the instructions, there's 4 holes, well 8 holes, but 4 holes and 4 holes, and it gives you the option as to how high or how low you'd like to mount the wing. The kit instructions is to mount it the second from the top. So if you count from the top down, it's spot number 2. So 1, 2, put it in spot 2. I'm sure it's been tested. I know these things went through months and months of testing to find the exact best position for kind of a generic setup, figure out what works for you, but there are also rules in the actual F1 real racing, and I know that this thing has been more developed to suit the real rules. So that is set up on there. Now, I almost forgot, there is a little pod, a little pivot ball that has to go on there. This is, okay, the pod itself is going to connect to this chassis in 4 places. 1 will be in the center, 2 will be on the links on the side, and 1 will be on the shock on the top. So right now we have to add in what is the link, or the kind of the hub for the center. Now these little tiny pivot balls, these little ones that are kind of on their own, these are the only times in this kit that you will need a 3mm. Where did I put it? It just goes into the top like that, and boom. There you go, lock it down. Now if I can just find where I put that little tiny piece of plastic, there it is. This guy here, it's a little tiny piece, and you gotta really force this sucker on. So be sure that you want it on there right now. I mean, it goes on, but it's a doozy. Oy. I actually used the part that it's eventually going to connect into as a bit of an assistance for me to get it on there. I can get more thumb on it, because this sucker is very well fit. So just like that. It will eventually connect into that, and I just use that to help me pop it on. Now this, all nice and locked down, turns freely. Nice, actually, and then just pay attention to which direction it goes in. That way it actually slides in. So what will actually happen is it will bonk in like that. So that's how that goes in. And that is, well, that part of the pod built. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to start to connect stuff to the chassis itself. So we are going to come back to this because that's obviously an important part. That's going to go onto here. So grab 1 and 2 of these little screws and grab this bad boy here and flip this chassis over, and this is going in. Now this is where the pivot balls mount to on the chassis, and it's really neat because it will actually allow it to move fairly on its own. Crank down, and you'll see now that fits into there like that. So now it actually will move. It's limited a little bit, but it will move now so that it gets its side-to-side motion, so that when you're driving, the chassis can actually move, and it moves like this as well. So ta-da. Now, of course, we've got cool sides that have to go on here as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These go from link to link. And what this is for these little guys. These are what holds the structure on the side. And so first we're going to put them in. So first one, I'll get this off here, into the pod. And again, using these little pivot balls, or these little balls here, that is what you need your 3mm for. If these are loose, or if they loosen off, you are going to lose sort of your rigidity. I always say that word, rigidity. I got that right. Of the pod itself, and things will start to get really squirrely because basically you will not track straight anymore because the pod will shift. So there's 2. So you see that on there. And then I will do 3. And make sure you check the instructions as to the exact hole it's supposed to go in. Of course, there are a whole bunch of holes in this thing, so make sure that you've got the correct ones. It's essential for making sure you have the correct lengths. And then this will be 4. And bingo. All right, so now we're looking like this. So, I put it in the wrong holes. Of course I did. After I just told you guys to make sure you put it in the correct ones, I jumped the gun and put it in the wrong ones, trying to be cool. They actually go all the way up here. Those other holes in the back were for battery mounts. How many of you were watching that while I was doing, going, wrong hole, dude? insert joke in comments field. Okay, now that's the correct one. And locked down. All right, now correct one. So make sure that that back pivot ball is in place like that. Now what you're going to do is these little guys on the side come with the tiniest little cap head screws. Little dudes. Little tiny dudes. That big. Now the purpose of these, you're going to use a 1.5 on this one. They just go into the side. So 1.5. Where's my 1.5? That's my 2.5. Oh, wait. There it is. So they're just going to go into the side, and they don't close, because you'll see how it's open-ended. If you can see it in the light there. You're not going to crank these suckers down. That's not needed. What the purpose of this is just to be able to tighten them enough. So these are going to go on here like this. See the snap 1, snap 2. Just enough that it still moves freely, but it's not just going to pop itself off. So I can still feel it's moving, maybe a little tighter. Still moving, maybe a little tighter. It's still moving. You're not going to crank it right closed. That's got some friction to it, so I'm going to back it off a little bit. So that's what you're going to do. And make sure that they stay free moving. You just don't want it to pop off, but the whole purpose of these things is to basically make sure that your pod itself is going to stay attached to the back of the kit and not try to bugger off on you. There we go. And like that. Perfect. I'll tighten the other one up later. I don't need to do that one on film. 1 and 2. So now you see it's attached to the back. It doesn't move. It still has its lateral movement, but it doesn't move like this. It still moves like this. It still moves like this, but it has no movement side to side. So that's how that's all attached now. I love it. Now, there is some more build up that you have to do around the side. Basically, what you're going to do is build this bad boy here. I've already got one built. So what we're doing is we're attaching this part. A couple different things. So number one, we got springs. See here? A spring that goes on the bottom. That is going to make sure that when it goes side to side, it centers itself back out again. So a little part there. And a pretty cool grub screw there. So grab your 1.5. And this is actually going to thread the grub screw into the carbon fiber itself. No problem. It goes in, no problem. The hole is the perfect size. And you just scrub it down to be flush. Ta-da. And then take this little blue spring retainer and screw it back up the bottom. And then pop the spring on. Like that. There is a little piece, little pieces of blue shrink that come with it that you can actually attach to or put onto the spring, because you can get different spring rates. So just track which one's which and mark them so that if you do swap out your springs later, you know exactly which one you were looking for. Now on the top up here, you're going to put a ball stud through like that and a nut on the bottom. So I'll grab my 2 mil. And these are nylock nuts, so you don't necessarily have to use thread lock on these, because as soon as it hits the nylock, it will stay. I'm just going to use my pliers. Crank this bad boy down. So you kind of see where we're going here like this. So the spring makes contact with the bottom chassis of the pod. This is going to screw onto here, and you're going to have a standoff on the front. Now, one thing I did learn was when you are putting these screws into this back kind of bulkhead, don't tighten them down right yet. Reason being is because depending on how the countersink goes in, it might adjust this and it may not sit exactly where it's supposed to. So I wait until I have all 3 screws into position before I tighten them down, just to make sure that I'm not torquing anything or tweaking the chassis at all. So I just snug them a little bit. One, countersunk, and normal. And then you'll see this one here, this little standoff goes up on the front here. So I will grab the top screw. This one I'm just going to crank right down because that is only going to fit in one way. And then, of course, bring this one up from the bottom. And crank that one down because that's only going to sit in one direction. Just like that. And then now that that's in place, then you can tighten these ones down a little bit more. So 1, 2, so now it's in place, so 3 and 4. So see how that fits on there now? That, I love this design because if you get hit from the side or if you sideswipe something, it's not going to break that part. So now you can see how that all kind of goes together, just like so, and it's protected. Half second, guys. I'm just going to put this other piece on right away since I've got the screws all sitting here. Uno momento. One part I did forget, I just noticed it now, forgot to put the body post on. Easy. It's plastic body post. It's one screw, and it screws in from the bottom. So I'll do that off camera because I forgot. I'm sorry. Step by step, and here I forget to put the body post on. So there's that. Remember, I'm not cranking those ones right down just yet. This one I can. And there we go. So now you can see that that whole back section is really, really coming together. So now the springs keep that back section floating and making contact so that it centers itself. So that's a bonus. And then, I mean, really just keep going from there. I absolutely love it. So I'm going to end this step for now. The next step will be installing the top plate onto the back here, a top plate that goes in the center, and moving on to the suspension. And then very shortly, we'll start the build of the back axle. So guys, thank you very much for watching this section of the video. If you have any questions about this process, please put them down below. And of course, click on the like, the subscribe, and of course, guys, share this throughout your community. Everything helps out. So guys, thank you very much for watching. Have yourself a great night.